Hello YouTube. In 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Westerners and other outsiders were permitted for the first time in over half a century to visit Kamchatka, one of the most mysterious regions of the former Soviet Union. Kamchatka is a 900-mile-long peninsula. It's about the size of California, but only 400,000 Soviet people were allowed to live there, and all with special military clearances. The reason for the secrecy was Kamchatka's far eastern location. Located west but not far from the Aleutian Islands, the peninsula was just far east enough to listen in on the United States during the Cold War. Back then, Kamchatka was completely shrouded in military secrecy. One cannot understand Kamchatka, its history, its people, even its sense of self, without an understanding of the immense military presence on the peninsula. Because of its location on the far eastern frontier of Russia and the former Soviet Union, Kamchatka has always had immense strategic importance. For this reason, the peninsula was a closed region for many decades. Until the early 1990s, foreigners and even most Russians were prohibited from visiting Kamchatka. Even today, long after the Cold War ended, Russia continues to maintain a heavy military presence on the peninsula, and many areas of Kamchatka remain off limits. Kamchatka is the home base of the Pacific submarine fleet of the Russian Federation. Now, Kamchatka is also the site of several Air Force bases, as well as the early warning radars that would detect an enemy attack on Russia. And this peninsula has a number of paranormal and esoteric mysteries. For example, shortly before the new year 2003, the Samara nuclear-powered submarine returned to its home base in Kamchatka. The sub is one of the best in the Russian Navy, but it returned earlier than planned and with serious damage. Tragedy was avoided, but in the light hull of the boat on the starboard side, 2 holes and several cracks appeared in the bow section of the sonar station. One version for the reason of the appearance of holes was this: a collision with foreign submarine. You see, during the Cold War, Soviet and enemy submarines staged cat and mouse games, carried out dangerous maneuvers close to each other, and under the sub Samara, underwater vessels of other countries were observed during its sailing in 2002. But direct contact with them was expressly excluded. Where did the holes come from? A lot of garbage floats in the ocean, from simple logs and buoys to containers and overturned ships that have not gone to the bottom and are drifting in semi-sunken state. Maybe the nuclear submarine collided with one of these objects. However, in the case of the Samara, experienced submariners resolutely rejected this version too. When performing special tasks, subs practically do not appear on the surface, so talking about some logs is simply ridiculous. However, the chairman of the Kamchatka Association of Reserve Troops, Captain First Rank Alexander Yerehomovich, sees nothing surprising in the whole. A submarine can run into anything: a pier, another ship, a rock bottom, a floating object. The veteran recalled several interesting cases that occurred in Kamchatka and related to damage to submarines. In the 1980s, an underwater missile carrier submarine arrived from the sea and was repaired as it hit the bottom during a mission. An impressive hole was discovered in the dock in the hydroacoustic station's fenced area, from where a huge boulder was sticking out. It weighed about 30 tons, and nothing to it. The powerful underwater cruiser was fine. This did not affect the fighting qualities and even the sonar station worked without failures and detected targets as needed. True, the commander of the Soviet submarine got a substantial reprimand. All Russian Pacific submariners know what Kasper-used bank is. In the 1970s and 1980s, Officer Dmitry Kasper-Used served as commander of the nuclear-powered icebreaker in Kamchatka. In the early 1980s, his underwater missile carrier, nicknamed Icebreaker, in the Pacific rammed into a coral reef. The blow was so strong that the rest of the crew fell from beds. The rocket carrier came home with a heavily damaged light body. This fact once again confirmed the unique survivability of submarines, as opposed to surface ships, thanks to their double hull. Erhomovich recalls that during the years of the Cold War, the potential enemy used one tricky thing. Large bags of strong polyethylene filled with water were thrown overboard from the vessel. A few pieces of such condoms were towed by a ship, suggesting or knowing that a Soviet submarine could be following on its tail, and if the submarine crashed into such a bag, then it received the damage. But in the case of the Samara, something incredible and mystical happened. The monitoring devices did not show in the area any underwater or surface objects, and suddenly the crew members located in compartments 1 and 2 heard a pop, which was also recorded by hydroacoustics. This was reported to the Central Post. The missile carrier submarine continued to move on. The watch units of the compartments checked devices and equipment. Everything turned out to be normal. Hydroacoustics and locators again confirmed that the boat was cruising alone in the ocean. There was no one nearby, and one can only make assumptions as to what caused the holes in the boat, which was sailing underwater with a sufficient margin of depth under the keel. What could it stumble upon? A giant squid or a whale, or another unknown gigantic underwater life form? There was another case. In 1992, the submarine K447 crossed the La Perouse Strait. No sign of any danger. When suddenly there was a strong blow. The submarine stopped and began to roll. Having reached 12 degrees, the roll stopped and the submarine leveled off, and it continued on. After autonomous navigation, when inspecting the sub to determine its condition, divers found that almost the entire bow below the waterline turned into one huge hole. Only due to the powerful double hull of the submarine, the K447 was able to successfully return to base. The accident was written off as a collision with a sunken iceberg, and the submarine was put up for repair. However, what really happened is still unknown. Now let's look at another strange phenomenon. The Kamchatka River and the surrounding Central Side Valley are flanked by large volcanic belts containing around 160 volcanoes, 29 of them still active. The peninsula has a high density of volcanoes and associated volcanic phenomena. Again, 19 active volcanoes. In 2014, mysterious red lights flashed near Kamchatka in the Pacific Ocean. A message about the anomalous phenomenon was posted on the internet by a Dutch Boeing 747 pilot who was flying from Hong Kong to Anchorage in Alaska. It was, I believe, August 24th. The pilot was called Van Heist, according to the Russian newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda. Now, according to the pilot, after about 5 hours of flying from an altitude of more than 10,000 meters, he noticed something in the ocean that he had never seen in his entire flight practice. Directly on the course south of Kamchatka, a red glow flashed on the horizon. It looked like lightning discharges, but was directed vertically upward. In addition, no cloud was observed. The pilot took some pictures when the plane approached the site of the anomaly, and it became noticeable that the glow, which became more intense, comes from some bright spots in the ocean. It illuminated the sky, coloring it in orange, which sharply turned into green, the color of the northern lights. The crew reported their observations to the dispatchers. They confirmed that the lights were noticed from other aircraft. Experts were trying to understand what this phenomenon was. An investigation had begun. As far as I know, there are still no results, even years later. The only sensible assumption from the aircraft, the pilots saw an eruption of an underwater volcano, and the lava shone with spots spilling underwater. But what if there are other assumptions? The Kamchatka Trench, or Coral Trench, is an oceanic trench in the northwest Pacific Ocean. It lies off the southeast coast of Kamchatka and parallels the Kuril Island chain to meet the Japan Trench east of Hokkaido. It extends from a triple junction with the Ulahan Fault and the Aleutian Trench near the Commander Islands in the northeast to the intersection with the Japan Trench in the southwest. I urge you to look at my video about the Marianas Trench after you finish listening to my account here. The trench formed as a result of the subduction zone, which formed in the late Cretaceous, and it created the Kuril Island arc as well as the Kamchatka volcanic arc. The Pacific plate is being subducted beneath the Okhotsk plate along the trench, resulting in intense volcanism. There was a very interesting research performed in 1949-1979 by Vityaz, a Soviet research vessel, and it covered many white spots on maps of the underwater relief of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. They discovered and investigated a number of interesting spots, and in particular the Kuril Kamchatka Trench. Not much is really known about the findings, even years later. We do know that they found very unusual gigantic traits in the animals that populate this trench, Kamchatka Trench. There has been an ongoing contemporary research in the area by joint Russian-German scientific team. The scientists discovered something new, Johansonia extrema sea leech at a record depth of 8,728 meters in the Kuril Kamchatka Trench. That's according to the press service of the Far Eastern Federal University of Russia. The leech's body length, almost gigantic according to scientists for such a great depth, is 58 millimeters. More often the sizes of such leeches do not go beyond 10 to 25 millimeters. The leech they found, researchers suggest, feeds on the blood of the deep sea fish. Earlier, at the depth of over 8,000 meters, fish leeches were never found. Besides, they are subject to the phenomenon of deep sea gigantism, which was first described by Soviet scientists who studied the Kuril Kamchatka Trench. According to a professor at the Department of Biodiversity and Marine Bioresources of this Far Eastern University School of Natural Sciences. Alexei Chernyshov, the professor, added that at depths of 8 to 9 kilometers, there are species that are much larger than those that live at shallow depths. But this phenomenon has not yet been explained. It is assumed that further research will allow scientists to understand how life was formed in various parts of the ocean, including including at great depths of the oceans, of course. I suspect that there are much larger animals than leeches that have experienced gigantism, also known as giantism. It's a condition characterized by excessive growth and height significantly above average. I am sure the Russian military is interested too in what's going on around the peninsula. Kamchatka has a number of mysteries, enigmas, and I will be coming back to this land in my videos. Here's one more of such mysteries. It's called the Stone Town, one of the most mysterious places in the south of Kamchatka. The foot of the modern human being has hardly stepped there. Limestone structures that stare at the sky at an altitude of more than 600 meters above sea level. Many of them are of such bizarre shape that there is doubt about their natural origin. Who built them? What unknown civilization has left its imprint on the Russian peninsula? What strange animals and beings populate the waters around the Russian peninsula? Please look at my other videos available about Kamchatka, and also videos about the Kuril Islands. You will find them in the description section to this video. Please subscribe to my channel and tell others. Please support my research. Thank you, and stay tuned for more such videos about the Russian, Far East, Siberia, Central Asia, and Eurasia in general. Thank you.